Please join us in this important conversation and send your questions to the chat of our streaming platform. Without further ado, Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Claudia. Good morning, everyone. Good early morning, actually, for those this side of the planet. Uh, Good afternoon and good evening. Actually, one of the things that COVID brought is the fact that the now speakers look like disco DJs with these headphones. So hopefully, I'll be as engaging. Uh, Can you please tell me if you are seeing my presentation? Uh, well, you are seeing my presentation, right? If I don't see any sound, okay, I'll go ahead. Well, I was saying thank you, Claudia. I will just the last 2 days we've heard about the importance of digital transformation in the region's agenda and the value of the partnerships that we have established, as you described, Claudia. I'm gonna go one level deeper on specifically on digital government, on what we're doing on digital government and how those partnerships are bringing value into the region. This is what I'm going to touch upon: the agenda, the activities and results, some of the partners that we've worked very closely with, and a couple of cases that I think exemplify the value of these partnerships. As yesterday was mentioned, the bank has what we call the action framework for digital transformation. And during these 2 days, we talk about the digital enablers, some of the key pieces to build that digital transformation. We on digital government are helping to build those enablers. I'm describing there a list of the areas that we work with the governments very closely to build: the institutional capacity, the strategy and plans, updating the regulatory framework. For those that are frequently working in the region, that probably know that less than half of the countries have data protection legislation, for instance. Designing and implementing cybersecurity policies and initiatives. A key topic nowadays that we're being hacking activities growing due to the transferring of activity more to the digital field, and we see banks and governments and energy companies being hacked every week. But just 12 countries actually have, out of 32, have cybersecurity strategy, just to put an example. Improving digital talent. We suffer in the region a scarcity of digital capabilities. The private sector suffers, and the public sector even further, to the tune of 500,000 people that are needed now in the digital field are not available. Uh, Data policies that are scarce as well in the region, and some of the other elements that you need to build a strong, reliable digital government: interoperability platforms, digital identity, digital signature, etc. We're helping countries to build all those tools, those enablers, to build that type of government that Claudia was describing at the beginning: efficient, transparent, and participative. So some of the activities and results that we have achieved as a consequence of those activities are presented here. 13 loan operations for a value of 500 million that are currently under implementation in the region to help countries to build those enablers. 29 additional loan operations for a value of 1.6 billion that are actually on implementation that support digital aspects of that agenda. So if you add it up, we're talking about 2 billion plus that are currently in execution in loan operations. Then we have 78 technical cooperations. As you know, those are grants for a value of 46 million that are helping countries with diagnosis, with designing plans, etc., on digital transformation. 60 knowledge products generated in the last 5 years in things related to online government procedures and artificial intelligence, data protection, etc. Then 45,000 people train on cybersecurity, and we're launching another training course in the upcoming months. 30,000 people trained on digital government, 6 ministerial meetings on digital government, which is key to push the digital agenda, because we need the policymakers to buy into the importance of digital transformation and to set up the necessary financial resources to move it forward. And another important activity is the fact that we establish a permanent policy and operational dialogue with all the countries under the network, Red Real network, that organize those 6 ministerial meetings. Now, just to highlight three activities and results, the cybersecurity report, which is the second one that was downloaded 150,000 times. So it's becoming a useful tool because it presents a comprehensive diagnosis of cybersecurity on each country. The Red Real, that's a picture of the ministerial meeting that I was mentioning before, is that permanent forum to work with the countries on digital government. And then the course that, as you can see, it says that it was taken by 24,000 people. Now, the partners. Claudia was mentioning that we cannot do that without our partners. I'm highlighting we honestly work with with a variety of governments worldwide that support us, but I'm highlighting three governments here that work very closely with us. And the names below the flags are not just to fill in blank space. Those names are there because along with the financial support, we receive technical support from those institutions that are mentioned below there. The INCD, for instance, in Israel is key in providing us technical support in cybersecurity. In Korea, for instance, the MOI, the Ministry of Interior and Safety, is helping us a lot technically on digital government. In the case of the government of Spain, along with the financial resources, the Ministry of Justice is providing us a lot of technical support, as is the National Cryptological Center on cybersecurity, just to put some examples. We also work, as Claudia was mentioning, with multilateral organizations. With the United Nations, we work closely on digital government, on helping the countries to improve in the UNDESA ranking. With the European Union, we're working on the identification system, the EIDAS, to provide us technical support to replicate the success of EIDAS in the region. With the OAS, as I mentioned, we published a cybersecurity report, and we work very closely both in cybersecurity and digital government. We both are in the executive committee of the Digital Government Network. And with the OECD, we are working on launching a digital index version for Latin American and Caribbean countries, actually. Now, with the private sector that Claudia also mentioned, these are three companies that we have been working very closely to build this digital government agenda. Everest, and NTT Data, Microsoft, and Google. We work with some other companies in very specific activities throughout the year, but with these ones, we've done, I think, a work that is having an impact in the region. And this is one of the cases, DigiGov, when the pandemic started, the relationship between government and citizens had the obstacle of not being able to interact physically. It had to be conducted online whenever possible. So with Everest and Microsoft, we launched this initiative, DigiGov, which is a solution to implement government transactions online in a quick fashion, in a quick manner. Microsoft contributed the cloud service, Azure. Everest contributed the portfolio of solutions on digital government. We contributed the technical capabilities of our digital government team. And this is a list of online services that are already available thanks to DigiGov. Approval of foreign investments in some of the countries you see there, Honduras and Guatemala, police records, first employment scholarships, etc. Another, I would say, a success story of the partnerships between the bank and our different partners, both in public and private sector, is the cybersecurity activity, which was basically non-existent in the bank 5 years ago. And now we have, you can see the numbers there, national loan operations for 50 million in 8 different countries, $50 million, but sectorial operations for $50 million, components, cybersecurity components that are in sectorial operations. We're working with 8 countries providing consulting advice and helping with penetration tests, helping to design CERTs or SOCs, Security Operation Centers. We have trained so far in workshops, on-site workshops, more than 200 government officials, and in online tools, 40,000 government officials. The cybersecurity reports, as I was mentioning, are widely used by policymakers and managers throughout the region. And we have organized 2 policymakers meetings on cybersecurity, one in Washington, D.C., and another one in Montevideo. Sorry, I've been probably running, Claudia, but I'll be available for questions. These thanks actually is not a thanks for attending the presentation, which we appreciate. It's a thank you for all the support throughout these years to build this agenda that is full of new opportunities that we can explore. Thank you, Claudia. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miguel. Now, Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. Welcome to this session. And I also join my colleague Miguel in thanking all of you for your continuous support. I'm going to go straight to the presentation. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so let me give you in a nutshell what is our approach in terms of transparency at the IDB, and especially how the Transparency Fund works. We want to work in improving our country's laws and regulations and institutional capacity, especially aligned with international standards of transparency and integrity. And the list is long. I'm just pointing at some of the most important ones because they're very relevant to transparency and integrity, such as the FATF standards on financial transparency, the OECD standards on fiscal transparency, the standards for the extractive sector. We try to combine 2 key elements that are core to the anti-corruption and integrity strategy. One is improving the access to information, but also promoting targeted transparency. Targeted transparency is a concept that defines how access to information works at the sector level. And of course, the use of digital technologies is critical because digital technologies are basically the instrument that helps break the walls of opacity. And all of this combines gives you a reduction or a control on the discretionality of public officials. And on the other side of the equation, we increase accountability. And we do that by strengthening the institutions that are responsible precisely for transparency and integrity reforms, particularly because we are not interested only in making new or more rules and regulations, but making sure that those rules and regulations are effective, not only for the public sector, but also for the private sector. The donors of the Transparency Fund are Norway, Canada, Italy, Sweden, and MasterCard. But in addition to our donors, we have a very good set of partners, which are Microsoft, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and the government of Korea. And why I make this distinction between donors and partners, because the Transparency Fund is very flexible. Sometimes we take in donations from countries that want to engage directly with the fund. But in many cases, we work with partners. For example, we adopt or we create special vehicles by which the fund makes a contribution and a partner makes a contribution. Now, let me go straight to something that is a living example of what I've seen said so far, which is the development of a digital platform for tracking public sector expenses. And particularly in the past 2 years, this platform, which is now working in a dozen countries in our region, has also included a module to track the expenses of COVID-19. And I'm showing the example, and I hope this can be seen by all, of the platform in Paraguay. Please, if you're seeing this, this is a platform that helps you track all the expenses of the public sector. You can break down the information any way you want. You can look at data in percentage. This, of course, gets updated every 24 hours. You can make a claim, you can ask for more information, you can make an allegation if something is not working. Everything is constructed on open data, so you can download everything you want. And of course, this is gives you an idea of how our partners are working in helping us create a very practical tool that supports making government more transparent and more effective. Why I show this example, and why is this a very good example of how we work with our partners? First of all, because this is a typical public sector reform, where not only the public sector benefits by using more information to improve management, accountability, and the use and traceability of resources, but also civil society benefits. I'll give you two very practical examples of how our three partners work along this. So Microsoft, for example, has been a critical partner in supporting the development of this platform. How? By providing us with cloud space, but also, and this is very important, by providing us with knowledge and with the capability of showing how to expand the use of digital technologies. For example, there's a back office application running now with a set of red flags in procurement in the health sector that is transactional. What does, a bit of a jargon here? This means that the system will prevent contracts that are red flags from moving forward, which is exactly what you want to do when you're doing prevention. How did the Moore Foundation contribute to this? In Peru and Colombia, the Moore Foundation, using a similar platform, helped train a large number of local entities to use platforms that allow citizens to track the use of public resources. And finally, we're also showing in kicking out soon a course for journalists, investigative journalists in our region, to help use the information. This is a very good example of how the partnership between the Transparency Fund and others comes together. I'll just would like to highlight 5 areas of strategic collaboration that we see in the road ahead. One, of course, is expand the use of Mapa Inversiones to follow the money. As we always talk with our partners of the Transparency Fund, once the platform is developed and is given to a country, and the country starts running the platform, the sky is the limit. You can take these platforms almost any way you want in tracking resources, including red flags in procurement, eventually in the future making better and more connections to other sources of information. Second, you may have heard about the Pandora Papers. The bank is the leading organization in our region in promoting beneficial ownership reforms. We have a partnership with the OECD. One of our key publications became the Global Toolkit of the OECD on beneficial ownership. Spoiler alert, in 3 weeks, you're going to see a new version of that toolkit. And that is driving many of the reforms, if not most of the reforms on beneficial ownership in our region. This is very important, not just for fiscal and financial transparency, but also to facilitate the private sector do transparent business with the private sector. Third type of engagement, we work a lot, as I mentioned, on integrity in the private sector. As part of the Americas Business Dialogue, we are helping CONFIEP, which is the private sector association in Peru, create a new integrity framework, and we're doing something similar in Panama with the banking sector. Perhaps some of you who are from the private sector can give us a hand here in making sure that we are sharing some of your best practices. For example, Advamed is participating as one of the key providers of knowledge and technical assistance on this kind of engagement. 4, our experience with the Moore Foundation and in training investigative journalists has been really very, very positive. If you're interested in joining us in expanding how citizens and other stakeholders use the information that we help governments make available on the supplied side, I think that it's a very important aspect in terms of strengthening the demand side of information. And finally, and this is something that Miguel mentioned, we do a lot of work and research on financial and fiscal transparency. We have recently conducted a workshop on illicit financial flows. We are expanding our research and investigation in where the money goes and how it's being used, and especially how to make sure that we enhance the support for legal financial transactions. One of our most recent publications has to do with the results and outcomes of the Odebrecht scandal in our region, and we have also been providing information and research in how the use of access to information combined with digital technologies not only saves money, but also increases accountability. I'm going to stop here. I do hope it did not extend too much. And as Miguel said, also available for questions when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Roberto. Now, Rodrigo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Let me know if you are being able to see the presentation. Can you see it? Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I would like to give a brief overview of our citizen security work and invite you to join us as partners in one particular flagship initiative that we have. As you know, Latin America and the Caribbean is the most violent region in the world, with a homicide rate that is 4 times the world's average. Unfortunately, most of its citizens fear becoming the victims of a crime. And this has huge social, political, and economic impacts. A conservative estimate puts the costs of crime and violence at 3.2% of GDP. Now, crime and violence is a complex phenomenon with multiple causes that vary according to the type of crime, and where the solutions involve multiple sectors and stakeholders. And that is why we follow what we call an integrated and multi-pronged approach that on the one hand addresses the social risk factors that make people vulnerable to crime and violence, and also strengthening the criminal justice institutions and governance systems of the security sector. We are the only development bank in the region, actually probably in the world, that with deep expertise in citizen security. Over the last decade, we've been working almost every country in the region through loans or technical cooperations or studies. And we have lent over $1.5 billion through more than 30 operations. And also, as Miguel said, we also have, for the last decade, an annual regional dialogue meeting with all ministers and vice ministers of security and justice and with our technical teams, which is key to exchange knowledge and to agree on joint initiatives. We have helped our partners in government achieve important results, from reduced child maltreatment to reduced homicides, more efficient systems, more legitimate police services. And much of what we have done has been thanks to the support of a vast network of partners. This includes the government of Switzerland, Spain, Canada, UK, and others. And actually, these partnerships are essential and an intrinsic part of our business model. Now, we have several strategic initiatives that we could share with you, but there is one in particular that cuts across all of them, and that is truly transformational, since it involves a paradigm change. And it's basically about putting science at the core of citizen security policies in the region, moving away from making decisions based on tradition or an opinion or ideology, and really trying to make them more data-driven and evidence-based. Now, the COVID pandemic has shown us how important and how difficult it is to make policy decisions based on science, even when the answers are quite obvious, as in the chloroquine versus mask debate. Unfortunately, when we look at the composition of policies across the region in citizen security, we see that there is too much chloroquine and too little masking up. And just let me give you an example. Police agencies love a program called DARE, whose goal is basically to discourage kids from drug consumption. And despite its very good intentions, there's overwhelming evidence that it is not effective. Not only it's not effective, in some evaluations have shown what's called iatrogenic effects or negative effects. So for instance, inciting alcohol consumption. On the other hand, we know that there are programs with a strong record of preventing risky behaviors like social emotional learning, which any local government could implement and that are rarely part of citizen security plans in the region. And I could share many more examples like this. And the question is why? Why is this? And there are several reasons, but an important one is that even though there is a pretty strong evidence based on what works, this knowledge is not easily accessible to public officials in Latin America and the Caribbean, particularly in Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking countries. And it's even more complicated if they want to know how to implement these type of solutions. So one of the strategic initiatives we have and that we would love to share with you is the development of digital tools to help local governments implement solutions that work. Now, we know that policing alone will not solve the crisis that we have in the region and that local governments are at the front and center of the solution. But most of them are pretty lost in terms of what to do. Mayors are overwhelmed with demands from citizens and have little capacity to respond. They have the potential, but often lack the tools. And that is why we have developed two tools, an online platform to share the knowledge about what works and what doesn't, and a digital platform to help develop municipal plans informed by that evidence. Now, the repository of evidence is basically an online database that is organized around 6 entry points that we have in citizen security: prevention of violence against children and youth, violence against women, situational prevention, policing, criminal justice, and social rehabilitation. And within each of these entry points, we have identified the main types of interventions for which there is enough evidence that to say whether it's effective or to what extent it is effective, under what conditions. So for instance, in policing, we have more than 15 types of interventions: community policing, problem-oriented policing, hotspot policing, and so on. And for each of these type of interventions, we have a summary of what it's about and what's the evidence that we have currently. In total, we have more than 80 types of interventions. And for each of these types of interventions, we have examples of concrete programs that have been rigorously evaluated through experimental or quasi-experimental evaluations, in total more than 700. Now, although we have more than 50 programs that are from the region, we know that most of the evidence base is from outside the region. And so one of our goals is to really help governments test if what has worked outside will also work, is also effective in a region. But at least this knowledge, the global knowledge that we have, should be an input into the decision-making process of police agencies, of citizen security plans. So our hope is that when a mayor is concerned, for instance, about drug consumption in its municipality and starts asking what can be done about it, and the police comes and says, we can implement this program called DARE, they can look it up in the repository and say, wait a minute, this program doesn't seem to work. And they can also see that social emotional learning usually works and go to the school district and say, let's try this. And this is the kind of change that we are trying to promote through this tool. But sharing the knowledge about what works is not enough. To really help local governments, we need to start the journey in the beginning of the planning process, helping them to understand what their most pressing problems are. and connecting them to their causes and solution. And that is what we have developed, this second tool, this second platform, which basically integrates multiple databases and automatically identifies what appears to be the most salient problems in that municipality. And then for each problem, the platform asks what the government is doing about the potential causes of that problem, which we have mapped out. And based on those answers, suggest solutions. And in the end, through this type of algorithm and other functionalities the platform that has, we try to help the local government put together a citizen security plan that is designed with citizen participation and can be monitored by citizens to increase its ownership and sustainability. So we want to invite you to be part of the development and implementation of these two platforms. There are many ways in which you could participate. The platform is already available in Portuguese and Spanish, and we'll be launching it in the next couple of months. We'll have also journalistic materials and calls for proposals. If there is a particular topic that you want to promote the evidence, either to generate or disseminate the available evidence, that is, we are very open to that. With respect to the platform for municipal plans, we are testing this in a few municipalities in Brazil through our loans, and we are expecting to have a full-fledged model in the second half of 2022. Again, if there are particular cities or countries where you would like to test this, we would love to also join hands with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Now, Huáscar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you very much to all of you for giving us the opportunity to share with you what the bank is doing in the area of fiscal policies for climate change. First of all, I would like to say that this is a very new area of work. In the past, most of the work done by the bank regarding fiscal climate change was focused on the ministries of the environment. And now we're trying to support also the participation of the ministries of finance. So I've made a very short presentation that I would like to share with you. Let me share my screen. Just a second. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So my presentation will be about unleashing the potential of green fiscal policies in Latin America. This is a work done by two divisions, really, the Fiscal Management Division of the bank and the Climate Change Division. It's the first time that we're setting a work plan together, and we see that we have a lot of potential in working together in this area. So first of all, I would like to share with you some background information, very general, just to give us a flavor of what we're talking about. Latin America, as you probably know, is one of the world's most vulnerable regions to climate change. We have every year extreme weather events in Central America or the Caribbean, and they have a very, very important impacts in terms of fiscal sustainability. We know that extreme weather events in the region have increased by more than 50% in recent decades. And we know that we have also the possibility to lose about 1% of GDP associated with these extreme weather events. On the other side, we have the risks of transition. Here I put only a number to illustrate this type of risk that we have in the region. We could lose up to $2.6 trillion in fiscal revenues from the transition to from oil to other sources of energy. So the amount and the magnitude of these challenges are really, really important. And we know that we have to deal with the transition in a very careful way. So what are the areas of opportunities that we see for the ministries of finance? The first area of opportunity is related with how to manage the economic and fiscal risks associated with extreme weather events. So first of all, we have to protect public finances by developing financial strategies to better cope with extreme weather events. We also have to improve public spending management related to disasters and climate change. We know that if we invest in resiliency, we could have up to $4 for $1 invested as benefit in this area. We also think it's important to support countries in designing policies for a just and inclusive transition to low emission economies. So we are helping countries to implement fiscal policies for a green economy with extreme consideration and very important consideration to the distributional impacts of this transition. We also helping them to manage the fall in fiscal revenues, particularly associated with fossil fuels, and improve climate-related expenditures. In doing so, we know and we made some calculations that we could create 15 million new jobs if we manage properly this transitional process. And the third area of opportunity is, of course, how can we take advantage and how can we take the opportunities to mobilize more resources towards supporting national determined contributions and long-term planning in the area of carbon reduction. So we are working in this area, and we are also working with the Ministries of Finance and Ministries of Planning in improving the management in the area of public investment. So public investments will be used more in the area of fiscal or sustainable infrastructure. Sorry. This work, how do we frame this work? First of all, this is part of the Vision 2021 strategy of the bank. The bank has identified 5 areas of work, and one of the key areas is climate change. We are working very hard in mainstreaming climate change within fiscal policies. 2 years ago, we had only one operation with a component of green fiscal policies, and now we are basically talking about 90% of the operations of the fiscal division are including dimensions or components of climate change. This is very important because the fiscal management division is approving around $2.5 billion every year to support ministries of finance in Latin America. But also, we are working to support and to enhance decision making of the ministries in different areas related with the Paris Agreement and the NDCs. In this area, we think it's very, very important to create a collaborative framework to promote green fiscal policies. Particularly, we're beginning to work, or we're working with OECD in the area of green budgeting. The AFD also supporting the decarbonization strategy in Costa Rica, and we're beginning to work with the German Federal Ministry for the Environment in the creation of a new trust fund that will support fiscal policies for climate change. And the objectives that we have in this new initiative is to support and champion the preparation of national climate finance strategies and their fiscal instruments, develop fiscal policy instruments and standardized management methodologies to identify, track, finance, and evaluate climate-related public funding and expenditures, support implementation of these instruments methodologies, and also support network activities of finance ministries to facilitate the exchange of best practices. This is basically the objectives that we have. We're working very hard in different areas: green public financial management, green procurement, green taxes. As you can imagine, the menu of possibilities is really very broad, and we're working in developing policy instruments and methodologies in these areas. So, and basically, the expected results that we foresee are the following. We want the ministries of finance to enhance their fiscal policies to support national climate commitments. We want ministries of finance to improve their fiscal management practices and instruments to support NDCs and LTS. And we are supporting the Ministries of Finance to exchange best practices and track regional progress in matters related to fiscal policy and climate change. To doing this, we are beginning to work in building strong partnerships. As I said, we are already working with OECD, particularly in the area of green budgeting dialogue. We're working with AFD to support the decarbonization strategy in Costa Rica. And we have a new initiative, new trust fund that we're negotiating and preparing with BMU to support fiscal policies for climate change. And this will be a very, very important push to our agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oscar, and thank you to all our speakers. It's really fascinating to be able to see the power of partnerships and the key role donor countries, private sector leaders, the philanthropic sector, and international development organizations that are working together with us have in strengthening this response and these initiatives. And that's why this is the question I would like to ask to all of you. We only have 10 more minutes for this discussion, so maybe each of you could take about 2 minutes to answer this question. And the question is precisely, what would you say are key ingredients for a successful partnership? What would you say in your experience and having implemented all these important initiatives have been key ingredients for these partnerships to attain expected results, to scale up initiatives, and to move forward with the next stage of all these important reforms? If we could go in the same order we presented. So Miguel, it would be first for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Claudia. Based some of the points I already advanced during my presentation, I would say on a kind of bullet point style, one important ingredient for that success to me is the financial commitment. I mean, it is easy to say, listen, I will help you with 3 experts here or this tool that is available. That is great. We appreciate it. It's valuable. But in many instances, you need also financial resources to when you could travel, but also to hire printing or advising or other services that are not exactly in the initial conversation. So financial resources. Second, I mentioned the combination of those financial resources with the technical advice. In the case of governments, the availability of the expertise in the ministries or in the agencies that manage a specific topic. To be that part of that conversation when we establish that partnership with the government, that is key in our experience in digital government. The same with the private sector, actually, along with the financial resources, the expertise that in the field of technology that the companies that are attending this activity have and is at the forefront. So financial resources, technical resources, and then I would say engaging the recipient of the help, meaning just having a dialogue with those that are going to receive the support, the governments, and that's where I think the bank can play a key role in having that close relationship with the governments or with the ones that are going to benefit from the partnerships. I would say those in my view are key ingredients, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Roberto, what about you? You were precisely talking about the powerful initiatives we have, such as the Transparency Fund. And there, as you were saying, we've partnered both with donor countries and key private sector actors. So for you, what has been important for this success?
I think Miguel hit it right. Those are the key ingredients. Just let me add one more that I think it's an intangible, which is patience. Many of the reforms we are promoting and our member countries are implementing do not happen overnight. So this is more of a marathon than a sprint. So understanding the political economy of these reforms is also part of the formula, I would say. But I think Miguel said it very correctly. It's a combination of elements that require resources, complementarity, and of course the ability to engage in conversations that sometimes we do not have all the answers. It's we find the answers together. It's a process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Roberto. Rodrigo, so you were highlighting how citizen security and justice is an area in which the IDB has great expertise, and this is a characteristic that is very particular of the work we do in the region. At the same time, you were explaining us how important it is to continue working on evidence-based policy. So in the examples you were providing, you were saying how the private sector, for example, can play a key role. So what do you think it's important to mention there when thinking of successful future initiatives in this regard, since leveraging technologies is something we'll continue doing and is so important for the sector you discussed?
Yes. I mean, I think, as my colleague said, the expertise that we have in our partner governments is really extremely valuable for us. Some of the best, experts on many of the topics that we work are from these partner countries, and so being able to mobilize them has been part of the appeal that our clients in the region find in working with us, that we are able to mobilize the best experts through our partnerships with governments. And the same happens with the private sector. We had a very nice partnership with the social sector in the bank, with Google Foundation, in providing training for youth at risk in the most violent neighborhoods in Brazil, and which at the end of these of 6 months, they got a certificate in IT as an IT specialist, and for these kids to be usually have access, get the less interesting opportunities, to be able to say that they have a certificate as an IT specialist given by the Google Foundation. It is a tremendous source of pride, and so we are in this amazing position of being able to bridge the worlds of companies like Google and with the poorest and most at risk youth. And so we really appreciate all of the opportunities that we have. Same thing with the penitentiary system, really giving job opportunities, a second chance to people coming out of prisons. One of the key ingredients is being able to give them good job opportunities and train them so that they can play a productive role and back when they are in society. And the private sector has a tremendous important role to play. We are developing several partnerships in general with companies in the countries where we work. We have great examples in Costa Rica, in Panama, but also in Brazil and in other countries. So the opportunities are many, and we appreciate all of them.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Oscar, you've touched upon a super important topic that has to do with really mainstreaming climate change mitigation and resilience at the heart of the public sector administration, which is the ministers of economics and finance in the region. And you were telling us about this recent initiative the IDB is about to launch together with the German government, precisely to foster this. So what would you say for other donor countries that could potentially want to join these efforts, considering the importance of this agenda of mainstreaming climate change mitigation and resilience really in critical areas of the public administration.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for your question. Yes, I would like to go back a little bit to your initial statement. What are the reasons for success of this partnership? And in some way, I want to answer your question. First of all, I think that we all have a common objective, and that's really, really important. As you know, ministries have created this coalition for climate change. There's a coalition of ministries of finance for climate change, and several countries of Latin America are already participating in this coalition. So, basically, what we did is to take that as a framework, what the ministries at the global level are doing in the area of climate change, and what can we do in Latin America in this area. So that was very, very important. And of course, we are exchanging a lot of information with other ministries too. The other element that for me it's really, really important to have a successful partnership is to be consistent with national strategies. What we're doing is to support national strategies, national contributions, and commitments in the context of the Paris Agreement. Third element that for me is really important is that we are not only looking for financial resources. We are looking for, all are looking for knowledge. How do we tackle the problem of or the crisis or the climate crisis from the perspective of the ministries of finance, from the perspective of the fiscal policies? And there we are finding that we have a very fluid dialogue with the ministries and other partners. So we invite other partners also to join this discussion, because we are looking to find solutions that are common and that could be very helpful for everybody. And for me, the last component that for a successful partnership is to have a very strong counterpart. And I would say that we are very lucky, because in most countries in Latin America, we have very strong technical capabilities in the ministries of finance. So we are going, as you said, to the heart, to the center of decisions, in order to incorporate climate change within fiscal policies. And of course, the idea is to invite other partners to join this effort. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to the four of you. This has been a fantastic conversation. And thank you so much to all our partners who joined us for this session. As you heard, there's a lot to do, and we count on you. We count on continuing our joint efforts and take these agendas farther in support of the region. Thank you so much to everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.